Welcome to the Eventful podcast, where real conversations meet big ideas.
This is where the real journey gets shared.
It's honest,
It's inspiring.
and it's always eventful.
Today's guest is Dr. Akemi Martin, DNP RN, a pediatric nurse leader whose career has spanned some of the nation's most demanding pediatric healthcare environments. Beginning as a bedside pediatric nurse, Akemi went on to lead high acuity inpatient units and a critical care transport team, developing a reputation for compassionate leadership and authentic connection with the teams she serves. Driven by a desire to lead with greater intention and sustainability, she later pursued her Doctor of Nursing practice in executive leadership at UCLA. Today, she serves as nurse manager at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where she's passionate about redefining healthcare leadership by balancing accountability with humanity and ambition with sustainability. Welcome to the Eventful podcast. Super excited about our next guest. Akemi Martin is someone that I've known for probably 20 years. I'll just give a quick background. She went to undergraduate at George Washington University with my sister, who was also on the Eventful podcast in the previous season. So we go way back, but she is someone that I have admired through her career. And she is extremely smart because she has about 25 degrees. We'll go into that. She is currently a patient care services manager at the Children's Hospital of Los Angeles. So welcome, Akemi, to the Eventful podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
And we're very happy to have you as well. So Akemi, why don't you give a little bit of a background on yourself? I know it's probably hard to tie that up into a minute or two, but just kind of go through your backgrounds. And I know I touched on your degrees. I just think it's so fascinating. So just maybe touch upon that as well.
Sure, no problem. As Mare said, we have known each other for a long time. I don't even remember when the first meeting was, but have circled around each other and now luckily live in the same city together. And just, I haven't met you yet, but looking forward to that. And again, just thank you for having me. So I have always been a person who loved learning. So as Mare said, I do have about 4 degrees. My last one I just finished in 2025. I have a doctorate in nursing practice with a focus in executive leadership. I have been a nurse for about 15 years. I've always worked in the pediatric space. I love kids. I love working with kids. There was a small stint during COVID in which we cared for adults, but majority of my career has been in pediatrics, and I've had the pleasure and the blessing of doing that in multiple hospitals around the country, either through being a staff nurse or through being a travel nurse. And eventually, later on in my career, I transitioned into the nursing leadership space and have been doing that now for the past about 5 years, 6 years. So that's where I currently am, and it's a different and exciting and challenging role, but I'm really happy and excited to keep growing in that space. And I did say that I would not be going back to school unless someone wanted to pay for it. And so I am done with traditional academic learning, but there's always an opportunity to keep growing and learning in life. And so I use just my experience in life to keep growing my career and myself personally.
Amazing. Well, yes, Akemi, it's so nice to meet you finally. I've heard so much about you. And thanks for joining us today. This is part of the beauty about Meredith and I having this podcast together, because when we invite people that she knows, I have so many questions for that person that Meredith may already know the answer to, or maybe she hasn't thought about asking, because I know you guys have been friends for a long time, and vice versa. So it makes it really fun and just a great sort of container for conversation, because we're always kind of ping-ponging back and forth. But thank you so much for that intro. 4 degrees. That's crazy. I think that it goes without saying that you're a school person. I admittedly was not a school person. So it's really interesting. Would love to hear a little bit about your sort of early days in nursing, and then very broad question, so answer it however you'd like. But also want to hear about your interest and transition into leadership from that purely medical space into understanding and realizing that you wanted to move into a more leadership position in that vertical.
Yeah. So when I started as a bedside nurse, like it opened a whole new world for me. It's a different language. It's a different way of speaking. It is a physically exhausting and rewarding job. It's mentally, emotionally, like it is such a holistic role where you're tapping into every piece of yourself in order to care for kids or adults or whoever you work for. But to care for them, to provide them support, encouragement, education, and literal care. So it really just like opened my world into how you can show up for people. And I loved that. I loved being a bedside nurse. I loved that no day was the same. Even if you were doing multiple back-to-back shifts, like, and you had the same patients, every shift could be different with what was going on. It was unpredictable. And there was always opportunities, again, to learn new things. There were new diagnoses. And even two kids with the same kind of disease process can react and have different treatment plans. So it really just, again, helped you keep growing and learning in the healthcare space. And when I was figuring out what I wanted to do, quote unquote, next with my career, I knew I wasn't done with the bedside. And so that's why I took the opportunity to travel nurse. And that was, again, a great experience professionally and personally. I got to live in different places. I would say I'm like dating different cities because you just got to explore a city and be there and learn about it while also learning a new hospital system, a new way of doing nursing, because the foundation is universal, but the way people do it in different spaces is different. So really, again, grew myself professionally because you also had to kind of hit the ground running. It was a short orientation, just a couple days, and then you just had to figure it out over the next couple months. So that was wonderful. And when I finally decided to kind of be in one place, I wanted to plant some roots. I landed in New York, which was not on my plan at all. I was always I'll never live in New York, too big, too loud, too this, too that. But I am so happy and grateful that I did. And that also was just, again, a growth opportunity for me. And then COVID-19 hit. And that really just put the brakes on everything. As we all know, everything stopped and shut down, except for obviously the hospitals. And so there began just like a completely different journey, which now I can look back on differently. But in the time, it was probably one of the darkest points in my career, just because it was so heavy and so terrifying and crazy. And in that process is where I started to think about, okay, where am I going next? Do I want to keep doing bedside? But I was feeling the push or the pull to do something different. I wanted to be able to show up differently. And the one thing that we needed during COVID-19 was each other, and we needed leaders. And we needed people who were going to show up for us, who were going to reassure us, who were going to literally take care of us, whether it was feeding us or like giving us the supplies or whatever we needed. And there were times where there was an absence of that. And I would look around and be like, all we have is each other, which was beautiful and great. But I was like, where are the leaders hitting the ground with us? Kind of like the guy on Titanic playing the violin, right? He was going down with the ship. That's how I would want a leader to be. And so that kind of sparked my, is there something I could do and show up as a leader myself, even though I didn't have that title at the time. But it kind of pushed me in that direction. And it was like 4:30 in the morning when I had a really tough shift, but I just couldn't sleep. And I looked on job portals and applied to one job, and I ended up getting it. And that's what transitioned me into nursing leadership at NYU. So that was my first leadership position. And there began, again, a much different and challenging journey, because transitioning into leadership is really hard because you're not necessarily prepared for what is being asked of you. And you're now managing a large team of people. And managing people, actually adult people, is really challenging. If you've never done it before, you have to learn your team. You have to learn the system. You have to learn business. That's why, if an MBA, anyone wants to pay for that in the future. But you have to learn all of those things while meeting operational goals and metrics, and also just showing up for the people who are taking care of the people. And when I was doing that, that was also still in the middle of the pandemic. It was the end of 2020. So everyone was burnt out. Everyone was not at their best. And I still had to show up for 145 people. So that was quite a journey. And that's the first time I really learned about burnout. And at some point there, I was ready for what was next. I wanted to, again, see how different spaces and places worked in the same way I did with travel nursing. And I also knew it was time for me to go back to school and get my doctorate. And so I used that as a catalyst to move across the country to California. I got my doctorate at UCLA and got the job at Children's Hospital Los Angeles, where I am now.
Wow. What an incredible story. Talk about rising to the occasion. Fascinating. It's so interesting that you landed in New York as well, and you were there during the darkest times of COVID. I think that I speak for most New Yorkers during that time that we've all kind of blocked that time out. I remember the hospital ship on the Hudson. I could literally see it from the window of the apartment that I was in at that time. And just understatement, so much respect for that. And also just the realization that you had during that dark, probably extremely difficult and uncertain time just goes to show that there are beautiful things that can come out of personal difficulty and also realizations that people have during some of the hardest times of their lives. And transitioning into leadership, we have so many different guests on this podcast from different walks of life. And I think part of what Meredith and I do on these episodes is we try to tie, what they're doing sort of into what we're doing and their journey into our journey. What's funny about this is Meredith and I often tell our teams, no matter what crises happen or feel like crises to us or craziness of the job and being on site, we always tell people we're not saving lives. And I tell our team that unless something irreversible has happened, that it's not an actual crisis and we can figure it out. However, you deal with actual crises and you actually are saving lives as a leader. I think you're one of the first people that we've had on that is actually saving lives and also leading a team. So I cannot even imagine what your day-to-day looks like, but I just wanted to note that that's incredible and your trajectory and career are fascinating and extremely admirable. So
Thank you so much.
Hopefully someone's listening that's going to sponsor your MBA. Just a quickly side note, at her graduation dinner in LA this past summer, she said, "I never want to go back to school." And I said, "We'll see about that." And now you're saying.
Literally all my friends were like, sure, girl. Yep.
over the years, we've planned more than 1,000 events around the world, which means we spend a lot of time inside incredible hotel properties. From remote ranches to historic estates to urban icons, we've seen firsthand what makes a venue truly work for groups. In each episode of this season, we're highlighting one property that we love or that has seriously impressed us. Today's property spotlight is Alisal Ranch in California. Set across sweeping hills and open skies, it pairs Western heritage with understated luxury. It is the kind of place where leadership teams unplug, think clearly, and actually have the conversations they've been postponing due to their regular busyness. Alisal Ranch is truly the place to retreat, reconnect, and step away from the usual bustle. So you just touched upon going into that leadership role at NYU. So how did running major teams change you?
I think it really made me do a lot of inner reflection, which I've always done, but you really have to think about how you're going to show up for a team of people. And in crises like you talk about, or in the everyday, how you will show up. Will you show up? What will you say? What will you do? So you really kind of have to think about that. And there's so many different leadership styles, like you've heard transformational leaders and servant leadership and stuff like that. So I did some of my own kind of digging on what that was. And you have to realize that if you're managing large teams, it's going to vary day to day, situation to situation, person to person on how you show up. And that's why it's also really important to know your teams and know who they are on a human level and on a person level. So I would be asking people questions about their lives and those sort of just random conversations on the unit just to get to know them as an individual so that I can pinpoint when something has shifted. Or when I notice, even sometimes it's like how they're wearing their hair that day, I'm like, ooh, it's a bad day for this person because she has her hair in a bun and she never wears her hair in a bun. So making sure I can be intentional about checking in with her. So it really just told me to keep checking in with myself and how I'm showing up and making sure I'm showing up as well as I can for the moment. It also really highlighted the importance for taking care of myself. It's always important for all of us, regardless of what we do, to pour into ourselves, to make sure we're good with ourselves and we're feeling well mentally and physically. But when you work in an environment where you're literally giving everything of yourself to other people, it's even more important. And so again, as a leader, when you have so many people who all have individual needs, it can take a lot from you. So at the end of the day, it's having your decompression moments. It's having your nighttime routines, your morning routines. It's taking a pause. It's taking the sick day before you're actually sick. Let's not save our sick days for when you are flu positive, dead on the floor. Of course, you should take it then. But can we take them before we even get to that point? Like, are you paying attention to how you're feeling, either mentally or physically, that you can say, I need a pause. I need to take a rest, right? There is no prize for attendance at this level, right? There's no prize for not taking vacation time. You have to use your time. You earned it and you deserve it. And then that's how you're going to best show up again and again for your team. That whole phrase, you cannot pour from an empty cup, is so true. And I internalize that. I want to pour from my overflow, because then people are also getting the best of me. They're not getting the bottom of the barrel. I want to give the best of me to the people that I am tasked to care for.
Wow, that's, I think, the definition of self-awareness. So good for you. It sounds like you've very intuitive and good at reading people. I have so much respect for healthcare professionals, but the best healthcare professionals are that, which they're intuitive, they're empathetic, they can read a room, read a person's face, hopefully read a person's body and know what's going on with that, ideally. But I just have to note that actually one of my sisters is a nurse practitioner and has had a different journey than you. However, she recently, in the past 2 years, just started her own business. She was in trauma and emergency, was a ER nurse for 10 years, and then moved into women's health, and now has opened her own sort of women's healthcare clinic. But watching her transition from medicine and that background, and also just being an extremely empathetic and caring person, to then having to put on the hat of leader, entrepreneur, has been such a fascinating thing to watch. So I would love to hear a little bit on that from you, about what you really learned about yourself through transitioning from just healthcare into leadership, and having to not only manage patients and save lives, but manage people so that they could better help the patients as well.
Yeah. Well, first, congratulations to your sister on that transition too. So everyone's making transitions, which I think is beautiful. And there needs to be a lot of great people in women's health, because it's not something that is well researched and funded. So I'm glad that we have good people in that space. But for myself, what I think I've learned is that I just have the capacity to do what needs to be done. It may not sound super humble, but that is the truth of the matter. Is like, I have the capacity to support people when they need that support. And I'm not perfect at it. I'm still learning. I'm still growing in that space. I definitely have opportunities of where I can grow, but I have the ability to do it. And I think that if you kind of apply your mind to it and you're passionate about that, those two things can make you really successful. And of course, things can derail your plan and whatnot, but I'm making the choice. I'm making the choice every day to say, I'm showing up and I can do this. I have the capacity for it. And for whatever I don't know, I have the resources, the people, the network, whatever it is to learn how to do it and do it better. I just, have a very strong belief in myself to do what needs to be done. It's real strong Capricorn energy over here.
Well, first of all, I love having you in LA. And I had a cross country move a little bit over 3 years ago to LA. And then when my sister told me that you were coming to LA, it was exactly 1 year after me. I was thrilled. And now we hang out all the time. Jess also had a cross country move this year to Florida from New York. So I'm curious to see what motivated you to move to Los Angeles, and what did you kind of leave behind professionally and personally?
So number one, I love moving. I mean, the actual process, maybe not so much, but this is actually my fourth cross-country move. So I went from Washington State to Washington, D.C. at 17 for college. Then I went from New Jersey to San Diego for nursing school. Then I travel nursed all around and landed in New York. And now I'm back on the West Coast in LA for school. Keywords here are school has really been the catalyst for moving. So for anybody who is thinking about moving and you're not sure, just go to school. It's a perfect opportunity. You also have to know that like nothing in life is permanent, right? And so if you don't like it, you can move back. And I am speaking from a place of privilege. It's not cheap. It's a physical labor, financial labor, it's all of that. But I think it's just a great opportunity to say, you know what? I need something different. I want to try something different. So let me push myself outside of my comfort zone because that's where you're going to get the most growth. So for me, it's always just been what's next, where am I being called or pulled to? Where do I feel good? I think I'm at a point in my life where it will either be somewhere in SoCal or somewhere in New York area because that's where my two core groups of people are. And so you do lose something when you move for sure, right? You lose the structure. There might be stability or the people, but if you create really good lasting friendships, people will always be there and you can always go back to that home. I never have a worry about where I could stay when I go to the East Coast. And that is all up and down the East Coast. I have people in Boston, I have people in Vermont, I have people in Florida, I have people in New York, New Jersey. So I have homes everywhere. And so while I miss my people in New York and I missed the things about New York, just the accessibility, the diversity, the just anything you want at any time, anywhere. I miss kind of that in New York. I also really love the ease and the flow of Southern California. I mean, the sun and the weather obviously is a great perk of living here. But I mean, I grew up in Washington State. So when it rains here, I'm like, yes. I'm like, let's go, I'll go inside and sit and be still and just watch the earth get cleansed with the rain. So I just have been so lucky that I've been able to move around because now everywhere feels like home in very different ways.
Well, it sounds like you're incredibly adaptable no matter where you are. Good on you for enjoying moving. After this last move that I did, I'm never moving again. I don't care if I have to actually move to another state and or country and start over. I will be keeping the apartment that I have in Florida because I will keep it forever in perpetuity because I can never move out of somewhere. From a stress level, a cross country move, maybe I just have too much stuff. That's probably the crux of it, but it was incredibly taxing and difficult. Yeah, I commend you for enjoying fresh starts everywhere because being in a new place is really fun. People say moving is like one of the most stressful things that humans have to do, and I admire you for doing it with ease. I want to hear a little bit about what you're doing now, as we discussed running major teams, and you have in the past since you made the transition into leadership. Want to hear why you're back in school and sort of just your day to day of being a leader and what that looks like now, because I'm not in full understanding of what you're up to now. And I'm sure the listeners would love to hear as well.
Yeah. So similar to being at the bedside, being a nurse leader is very similar in the sense that your day to day looks different. I am a manager. So when I say the word manager, I am managing tasks, I am managing goals and things like that. So operational metrics, they're things that just have to get done. Like we have to get time cards done, payroll, we have to get performance reviews done, you have to get schedules done. There's HR things or disciplinary actions that you have to get done. So those are the things that I am managing day to day. And every day I start my day with a list of like, what is the priority? What's the second priority, et cetera, and try to cross all those things off my list. But holistically, and where like the good stuff is and where I really love being a leader is when you do get to be a leader. And that is when you get to see a nurse grow or have an epiphany, or they come to you for advice about what to do with a challenging, maybe family or patient or situation, or they're looking for what's next for them in their career. And you get to talk to them about what you've done, what you see for them. And you see those kind of shifts and light bulb moments, and they come back to you and they got that new job, or they got back into the school that they wanted to. So that's where that professional development of nurses and our care partners is really the bread and butter of leadership, of leading the team and showing them what is possible for them and supporting them in their goals and their growth, of being impactful in their workflows, changing policies, implementing new structures. Like that is where you really see how leaders really show up and really shine. And that's the stuff we really love to do. Sometimes that gets a little bit lost because, like I said, there's a lot of tasks and management and things that have to get done. But it's really making it a point to say, I need to get up and take a break from what I'm doing in front of this computer. Let me go walk the unit, check in on families, check in on my staff. Let me go down the hall to another unit and go talk to another nurse manager. What are they working on? What are their challenges? Let's do some knowledge sharing. And so really trying to balancing both the management and the leadership, and making sure they're like cohesive and flowing together for the role.
And what parts of leadership have surprised you?
Yeah, I think it's knowing the difference between management and leadership and knowing which one needs to show up when. Still sometimes figuring that out, but there is a difference. And so leaning into one versus the other at certain times or in certain situations. I think it's realizing that people are people regardless of what you choose to do in life. I will be the first to always say, like, nurses are some of the best people on the planet. I think that we put the care in healthcare, but nurses are still people. And so while it was appreciated, we get that like not all superheroes wear capes, some of them wear scrubs, or nurses are heroes. While that's true, like we are still just human beings. And so as a leader, seeing people as full human beings, understanding that some people are walking into the hospital and leaving some heavy burdens or baggage at the door in order to show up for our patients and our families. And so as a leader, it's recognizing that, giving people grace when they need to, holding people accountable as well when you need to, which can be really challenging because you know what they're carrying, but there still is an expectation that has to be met. So balancing those two things. So really, I think knowing your team is really important so that when you need to push them or when you need to give them space, you know when to do one of those two things.
Oh, that's such an interesting answer. I wanted to segue for a second. So I am a Reddit girly. I'm a Reddit connoisseur. I check Reddit every day.
Okay.
And, I'm gonna tie this back in, don't worry. They're also a client of ours, which was, like, my ultimate client ticket because I love getting on Reddit. But some of my favorite Reddit threads and the ones that I get sucked into the most are about medicine and just about healthcare workers answering just some of the craziest things that they've seen or, like, the saddest things that they've seen or the most shocking. And also my sister's stories about working in the ER for so long. I think because that is something I know that I could never do, which is why I just had no path in medicine or interest in going into medicine when I was younger and in college. But again, I admire healthcare workers so much because of, I think, exactly what you're saying and really the compartmentalization of what they see and or being able to compartmentalize enough to not carry that weight or to not leave, the hospital or wherever they're working and take that with them. I find that so fascinating. I mean, we have to do that a bit in our job, the compartmentalization of stress and just seeing how to solve problems and trying not to take that out of the door with us. But I think in healthcare, it's not even comparable to anything that we're doing. Like it's so far and above just probably some of the things that you've seen and also leading the teams that you lead now and their emotional weight and sort of that whole, it's not even the emotional weight of the patients that your team members are taking on or trying not to take on, but then you have a team of all those people who are probably trying to manage their emotions and manage their compartmentalization and they also have their personal lives, things going on at home. So I want to hear a little bit about how do you carry or compartmentalize the emotional weight of leading a team of medical people? It must be so challenging and I'm fascinated by what your answer will be on that.
Yeah. I mean, the key word is compartmentalization. You really do have to figure out in a high stress situation or in a really tragic or sad situation how, again, you can still show up for either the patient, the family, your coworker, or your entire team. I used to say when I was at the bedside to parents when they were stressing or really scared or nervous, I would always say, until you see me panic, don't panic, right?
Mm.
Internally, I could have been panicking. Like while I'm saying the words internally, I'm like, ooh, this kid, we need to get the team here fast, whatever.
Mhm.
But I had to keep that straight face because they needed to trust that I had them, that I had their back, that I had their kid, that we will get what this child needs as soon as possible and they will be on their journey back to wellness or wholeness or home. And so it really is trying to figure out how you can wear a mask while still being human because you also need to show them like I do care about them beyond their diagnosis, beyond whatever is going on. I care about them as if they are my own. And there's plenty of nurses who literally have their own. Like, I am child free by choice, but there are plenty of people who have children at home. And so they're looking at these kids and seeing their own, or you're seeing your nephews or your nieces. Like, I see my nephews, my nieces, my friends' kids, right? And so you have to still show that human piece. You have to be empathetic. You have to be understanding, even if you haven't gone through what they're going through. And then once you get through the initial chaos, that's when you then go to yourself and literally breathe it out. Take that breath, literally reflect on the situation, and hopefully let it go. And it might take some time, but you do kind of have to let that go, because when you're on shift, you still have to walk into the room next door and be like, hi, I'm here to take care of your kid while your previous patient is going through something really challenging. You still have to show up, right, for the next person. So you have to be able to switch that on and off and transition quickly. And then at the end of your day is when you can really kind of breathe all that out, let it go, and move forward, because you might have to literally show up in 8 hours for your next shift and do it all over again for your next set of patients in your assignment. And I do the same thing as a leader. Like, I'm not a morning person, but I can't walk into work like, good morning. Hey, everyone. Regardless of what is being presented back to me, I am, good morning, everyone. How was the shift? What are we doing today? I have to show up excited and positive, because I want that energy to be poured into my team so they can pour it into our patients and our families. So really important to kind of turn it on and turn it off and still do it in a way that is authentic. I am excited to go to work and see my team. I am, you know, generally a pretty positive person, but I still have my days where I'm just like not feeling it, or we have moments, or I've had difficult conversations that really take a lot from me. But I just have to take that moment, take that breath, drink some water, get some sunshine, and then right back into it until the end of my day. And then I let it all go and I start over the next day.
I could learn a thing or two from you. And
Yeah.
you are saving lives, and I am not.
But you are dealing with some tough situations, and I'm sure, challenging situations that is important to that person, right? There are times, right, when people come to you and they're in a crisis and you're like, I'm not really seeing what the issue is, or you're easily like, we can easily fix this. Why are we panicking, right? But you can't tell someone that, like, why are you panicking about this thing? You have to say, okay, I hear you're frustrated about this. I hear this is a stressor for you. This is what I have for you to fix it. All right, let's do that and move forward. So we're doing different things, but also the same.
Would you like to go back to school for events and join our team? I think you'd be great at it. You don't even have to go back to school.
I know.
And then also sometimes our clients ask for a medical team on site. So it would just really check a lot of boxes for us. If you could do that, that'd be great.
I'm happy to be on call for you guys. Absolutely. I also want to see you in motion.
Gosh, it's just so funny because, as mentioned earlier, I tell our team, unless somebody's lost a limb or something is really tragic or irreversible, it's actually not a crisis. It's solvable, right? And I think that helps put things into perspective. We don't tell our clients that. We tell them,
Right.
of course, like everything's solvable. Just to your point of like, I'm not really seeing where the crisis is. Sometimes we have that. And also just like trying to stay calm in the face of chaos, because we actually had just had another guest, Kavitha Gaddy, and we were talking about her leadership style. And we touched upon just if you're calm, like you're saying, with your patients or with our clients, then they see that as like the driving force of and the mood of the situation, right? But if you're running around not calm, then they know something's wrong. I think it goes even for leading teams, where even with our teams, it's like we have to get up, have a happy face every morning, no matter what emails have come in overnight or what's happened in the past 24 hours, or we're on one project and then we're moving to another project and compartmentalizing this project. Again, not saving lives. It's really not comparable to what you do, but I think it's just a compartmentalization aspect that you're trying to reassure people that are in panic for some reason, whether it's medical or not. And you have to be able to read a room as a leader, no matter what you're doing. And you have to be able to read somebody who you're talking to sort of calm them down, tell them what the solution is. But it's so true. I think we tell our team and our clients that also, like, when we're panicking, then you can panic. And the goal is to plan well enough for our job that we don't run into anything that we're going to be panicking about, because we have a backup solution for every single thing that could go wrong. And that's what a good planner does. However, I know in medicine, you can't plan as much and things just happen on the fly and you have to know what to do, which is crazy to me. I don't know if I would actually be good at that. So,
I honestly think you would because first of all, I think transferable skills are in different industries is so real. Like I waitressed for a short period of time. The amount of transferable skills from waitressing to nursing is insane. I think it really helped me. And I think the most important thing is like you have to be willing to abandon the plan. You can have the best laid plan, but you're not technically in the driver's seat, right? And so you have to be willing to abandon the plan, to pivot, and you have all of your knowledge, your experience, your skills, your resources behind you to tap into if you're going to pivot. And you have to be able to tell people like, okay, we got to let that go. That didn't go the way we wanted to. We are pivoting to this. Let's go. Let's marching orders. Let's keep moving forward. We can debrief. We can look back. We can plan for the next time. But right now, here we are. Let's all shift and move in that direction. And I think being a good leader also is the ability to say that, put that down, we're moving this way, pick this up, right? Like, let's move forward.
we spend a lot of time on this show talking about what actually makes events work, how strategy, leadership, and momentum come together in real life. That's exactly why we built Prospect 365, our partnership model for teams producing multiple events each year who want a strategic partner, not just a vendor. We stay close to your events calendar and your marketing goals, giving you consistent expertise, predictable support, and a team that truly feels like an extension of yours. If that sounds like the kind of support that your team has been looking for, you can learn more at prospectevents.com/prospect365.
Yeah, and I see a parallel because we always say the best events people are people that can make changes really quick. Not to once again compare to medicine, but I do see overlap in the sense where there's many outside forces in events, right? Like there could be a weather thing. There could be because it's a live thing, similar to anything medically, right? It's a live thing. So things might have to change. And if you're so set in the plan, that doesn't work very well with events. You have to be able to think on your toes and pivot. Sometimes you have a totally different plan that you have to then enact.
Right.
So, Akemi, I want to go back a little bit to your time working in New York during the pandemic. And it ties in with our next question because I know that, of course, was such an intense environment in the world, in that city, probably in the actual hospital where you were working. And I want to know what it was like working in an intense environment like that and how you learned to protect your energy during that time if you could do that at all, and how that sort of transitioned you and your skill set into leadership and what you're doing today. I would imagine that during that time you probably learned and grew so much by just seeing so much and being under so much pressure. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
I think one thing that really helps anybody, regardless of what you do, is keeping your own personal why at the center and then centering, right? For you, it would be the client. For me, it's the patient. They are the center. Why I'm showing up is my personal like passion or my drive, right? And so when those two things meet, it helps you keep showing up the best you can. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was so much unknown. There was so much out of my control, out of anybody's control, really. But all we knew is that there were people who were suffering, who were dying, who were terrified, or who were sick. And so I chose to be a nurse to care for people at the worst time in their lives. So I have to show up for them now. It's the worst time for everyone, but my why is showing up for people when they need me most. And so every day, getting shuttled from hotel to the hospital in that short drive was like, okay, I don't know what today's gonna bring. There is a high probability of loss, but whatever time I have with this patient or with my team, I'm going to show up the best I can. I'm going to lean on my team. I'm going to support my team, and I'm going to take care of these patients with what we have in the best way that I can. I'm going to give people dignity. I'm going to give people comfort. I'm going to make sure people don't feel alone because there was a lot of isolation, both for the patients and for the team. And so it was just like, what can I do in this chaos to make it a little bit better? And that's my kind of philosophy for everything that I do. How can I show up to make this a little bit better, even if it's like a horrible situation? And so I did that every day. I compartmentalized kind of reset the button every day. I really honored the time that we were spending. I really honored the patients who I cared for and the ones that we lost. Like I wrote their names down and, really had a kind of like moment to wish them the best in the next phase of their journey, no longer on this earth. And so taking care of them, taking care of myself is what really kept me going, even though it was exhausting and hard. And then I took that into leadership. Again, the nurses that I now am tasked to care for have just gone through the same thing that I went to in different ways, and they were burnt out. They had families that were struggling. They had family members that had COVID. People had COVID themselves. And so how could I show up for them so they could keep taking care of the people who needed it most? And one of my core values is presence. And so that's what I just tapped into, is how my presence can affect the people around me, how my presence is going to affect me. And am I showing up in the best way that I can? And if I can't show up in the best way I can, being honest about that. There were days where I was like, ooh, this is going to be a rough day for us all, but we're gonna do it together, right? And just move forward with that.
Very beautiful.
Thank you.
We always end each episode with an eventful moment because the name of our podcast is the Eventful Podcast. So we would love to hear from you. A moment that has most changed you. It could be in your career or your life, but yeah, love to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, as a whole, I would say entering the nursing profession was the most eventful thing in my life, in the sense that it, has changed the trajectory of my life. But I would go back to that COVID-19. To be clear, I would not go back there, like time machine, not go back. But that would be the most eventful moment in my life, in the sense that it really did kind of change my outlook on life. It changed, the trajectory of my career. Leadership wasn't originally on my life plan, but it felt like the natural thing. And what COVID-19 showed me was the importance of, again, how you show up in your presence, the importance of community. Like now, when I look back on it, what a beautiful time in tragedy, because it brought people together. People did what they needed to do to keep each other safe. We all took care of each other. When people were asking me, what can I do? I said, please just stay home, because I just want you to be safe. I don't want to have to worry about you, right? I need to focus on the patients. And so the importance of that community and that love that we all had for each other, and getting through a really dark time together, is what I want us all to kind of tap into. I think that was an eventful moment for us all. Let's tap back into that in this time of like, how can we show up for each other, build this community, and be together and take care of each other, so that we can live like prosperous and healthy and loving and joyful lives.
It has been such a pleasure having you. And I love this podcast because we talk to people from all different backgrounds that you can relate to. And like Jess was saying, we've had many leaders on this from different backgrounds, but anyone can relate to your background as well, even if they're not in the medical field. And I've known you for so many years, but I've learned a lot from you on this podcast that you haven't shared with me before. So, or maybe I haven't asked you those questions. So we wanted to thank you so much for taking the time, and the listeners are going to be thrilled with this story.
Thank you so much for joining. It was lovely meeting you. And I know everybody listening is going to take a lot away from this. So thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity and holding this space, and holding the space for us all. You're doing amazing work, and I'm looking forward to watching you guys keep growing. Prospect Events, that's where it's at.
Thanks for listening to the Eventful Podcast. If you loved this episode, follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and catch us on Instagram at the handle @TheEventfulPod. See you next week.